My husband is a jealous man. He left me alone at the party and blocked me from all social media just because I took off my engagement ring to go talk to a guy at the party. The red and blue lights were bouncing off the living room wall as if my house were a crime scene. A police officer held a notepad and looked at me with that face of, I know you're lying, but tell me anyway. Tomas, my husband, was 2 meters away, rigid, cold, as if I were a dangerous stranger. My throat was dry and my hands were trembling, but inside I just thought, this shouldn't be happening to me. And if you think it all started with a ring, wait until you hear how this disaster unfolded. Tomas has always wanted to sell the idea that he's calm, mature, with healthy boundaries. It makes me laugh because that's the elegant way of saying he's jealous and punishes in silence. I'm Isabella, and if there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that a woman can't go around asking for permission to breathe. I'm married to him, yes, but I didn't sign a contract to live under emotional surveillance. The engagement ring wasn't even my whim. That ring was a family heirloom, a relic with history, with drama, with that heavy energy of an untouchable object. Tomas would say it with pride every time someone asked if it was his grandmother's, if it symbolized values, if I don't know what. I liked it, of course, because it's beautiful, because it shines, because it imposes, but also because, let's be honest, Tomas loved what it represented, that I was marked, chosen, his. The party was one of those that start innocent and end up being a social showcase. Loud music, low lights, people with drinks, laughter, that atmosphere where everyone feels more attractive for a few hours. I was fine, I was normal. Tomas, on the other hand, from the moment we entered, had that supervisor attitude, watching, measuring, detecting imaginary threats as if I were a bomb about to explode. And then I saw him, Nico. Nico was my ex-boyfriend from college, that is, someone who belongs to a stage where I was freer, lighter, more me. It's not that I was looking for him, he was just there as if the universe wanted to remind me that not everything has to be serious, domestic, and proper. He greeted me with that smile of, I remember you, and I'm not going to pretend that you didn't move something inside me. I know how this sounds to people who live to moralize. But look at it from my side. I just want to talk, to converse, to prove to myself that I can still go to a party without my husband holding me by his gaze. Nico asked me how I was. He told me I looked the same. He dropped one of those phrases that inflate your ego even if you want to act tough. And I allowed myself. Why? It's not a crime to feel seen. Yes, I took off the ring. And here comes the part where everyone jumps on me like hyenas. I took it off because it was bothering me with the glass, because I was sweating, because I didn't want to be playing with the light of the diamond in my hand every time I gestured. And yes, also because I didn't want Nico to look at me like someone's wife. I wanted him to look at me as Isabella. Not even 10 minutes passed when I felt the atmosphere change. It's like when the air gets thick and you know someone is watching you with rage. Tomas was there with his phone in his hand, motionless, with that judge's look that decides your sentence before hearing your defense. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but he lives to interpret. And when a man like that interprets, the truth no longer matters, his movie matters. I got a message, literally a sharp blow on the screen. Enjoy your single life. Just like that, without conversation, without context, without maturity. And before I could even process it, I saw him move towards the exit. He didn't even say goodbye. He didn't come over to ask. He didn't give me a chance to say, hey, calm down. He just left me there as if I were ashamed to be abandoned. I tried to call him, it wouldn't go through. I tried to write to him, it wouldn't send. I went to his social media to see if he was exaggerating and blocked on everything, as if I were a toxic ex and not his wife. That's what burned me the most, the ease with which he decided to erase me, and on top of that, the story he tells himself, that he's the healthy one for leaving and I'm the problematic one for staying. It was then that reality hit me like a bucket of cold water. My hand was bare. I searched for the ring in my pocket, in my purse, on the table, in the bathroom. Nothing. And the panic wasn't for the material value, although obviously it was also for what it means to Tomas. That ring was his trophy, his family pride, his excuse to say that I represent something. Coming back without it was like coming back with a tattooed sin. I crouched under the table where we had been. I checked the floor with my phone's light like a desperate person, and every second was more humiliating. People passed by and saw me on all fours, and I could only think, Tomas left, he blocked me, and now the universe wants to finish me off. I wanted to scream at someone that this wasn't fair. Why? It wasn't. If Tomas hadn't left me alone for a whim of jealousy, I wouldn't be in this position. I wrote to Nico on impulse, asking if he had seen the ring. He said no, that maybe it fell off, and that lukewarm answer lit me up more, because at that moment I didn't need maybe. I needed solutions. I needed the world to give me back what it took from me. But the party went on, the music went on, the people went on, and I was in a mental tunnel where only the void on my finger existed. Then I thought of Tomas and his face when he found out. The kind of face that doesn't argue, it sentences. The kind of man who doesn't explode, but who punishes you with surgical coldness. He had already left as if I were guilty of something, and now I was going to arrive without the ring. It was too much. It was going to be the end, and the worst part is that it was going to be an unfair end because I wasn't being unfaithful. I wasn't leaving him, I was living. That's when people don't understand something. You don't lie because you want to, you lie because you're given no choice. I had to get home with a story that Tomas couldn't use to crush me. And if he wanted to make me the bad guy, then I needed a bigger frame, something that would force him to feel guilty for leaving me alone, because yes, he left me alone. And that, in any decent narrative, has consequences. So I got in an Uber, still trembling, and on the way I started to put it all together, not as a villain, but as someone who's protecting themselves. If Tomas behaves like a judge, then I have to arrive with a case where I am the victim, where he is the man who abandoned his wife and put her in danger. It's not manipulation, it's balance, it's defense. When I arrived, instead of going straight in and giving him my fear, I did the logical thing. I called the police. Yes, I called them. Because if I get robbed on the street, what am I supposed to do? Go ask my blocking husband for permission? No, I needed a report, I needed a document, I needed reality to be written down before Tomas wrote his. The patrol car arrived, and suddenly my own house became a stage. I told them I was mugged when I left the party, that they cornered me, that they ripped the ring from me. I exaggerated details, of course, because in those moments you're nervous, you remember fragments, you get confused. Besides, who can accurately narrate a traumatic event? I'm not a machine. I'm a woman alone, abandoned by her husband. And there, with the police officer in front of me and the patrol car's light coming through the window, I heard the door open. Tomas came back, and he came back different, not as a husband, but as someone who comes to see the mess I caused. He stood there looking at me as if he were evaluating whether to believe me or destroy me. And I, with my heart in my throat, knew that the worst part wasn't the lost ring. The worst part was what he was going to do with this. Comments on the main story. Anonymous user 1 says, "How convenient that you were mugged right after taking off your ring to flirt. First you play single, then you play the victim, and on top of that you involve the police. Tomas isn't jealous, he's someone with dignity and boundaries. You're fabricating a legal drama. I hope the full weight of lying falls on you, because this isn't defense, it's cheap manipulation." OP's reply. I love how you all speak with such certainty from your couches, as if you were there with me. Tomas left me alone, he blocked me, he exposed me. And you want me to go home with my head bowed? I made a report because that's what you do when something happens to you, and if my memory was confused it was because of the shock. But of course, for you, the wife always has to be guilty, even if the husband is the one who abandons. Anonymous user 1 says, "The worst is that you care more about how it will look than the fact that you're lying about a crime. Do you know how many resources are wasted on false reports? Do you know who they could arrest because of your story? Also, you don't get called out for flirting without a ring. It's like a movie, but a horror movie. Tomas did the right thing by leaving. You don't want a partner, you want an audience and control." OP's reply. How dramatic, really. You sound like experts in law and morals at the same time. No one is being arrested because of me. I gave a general description because that's how a confusing assault feels. And yes, I'm worried about how it will look, because Tomas lives to destroy my image when he gets angry. You don't understand what it's like to be with someone who punishes you and then plays the victim. Update 1. The next morning was disgusting in the literal sense. Emotional hangover, swollen eyes, a sore throat from talking to the police, and from crying with contained rage. I hadn't slept much because Tomas was moving around the house like a stranger, without touching me, without asking if I was okay, without doing any of the things a husband should do when his wife has supposedly been assaulted. He wasn't worried, he was evaluating. The police came back because that's how it works when there's a violent robbery. They follow up, they ask questions, they try to pinpoint the exact location, reconstruct timelines. Tomas at first put on the right show, the "Are you okay?" And I almost fell for it, I almost softened. I almost thought this would at least serve to make him understand that he couldn't just leave me stranded. But then I saw it. He was listening too intently, not with affection, but like someone waiting for the other to contradict themselves. I told the story again, trying to keep it the same, and that's where I made the mistake anyone would make under pressure. I added details to make the danger clear. I said the guy was tall, that he had a specific build, that he was wearing a cap, that he smelled of alcohol. And yes, I described him similar to a man that Tomas and I have disliked for a long time, because the mind makes associations. You take a familiar face and paste it over the fear. That's not malice, that's basic psychology. But Tomas didn't see it that way. Tomas saw it as an opportunity. I knew it because at one point he asked to go to the bathroom with his phone in his hand and came back with that face of, "I've got something now." Later, when the police were finishing up their notes, he asked to speak to them separately, like the responsible husband who collaborates with justice. And that phrase made me nauseous. Collaborates with justice, as if I were the suspect. I didn't hear everything, obviously, because he did it on purpose, away from me, but I saw the gesture. Tomas showing them his phone, scrolling with his finger, showing screens as if he were presenting a case. I later found out from a phrase he let slip that he had checked bank notifications and something didn't add up. And of course it didn't add up, because my life didn't stop because of his tantrum. I had to move, pay for transportation, buy water, try to breathe. It turns out the police were struck by the fact that, according to my story, I had been assaulted at a certain time, but my card registered payments for an Uber and drinks later, as if a victim couldn't, I don't know. Try to get home in the safest way possible, as if panic doesn't make you make weird decisions. Tomas presented it as an inconsistency, and I would present it as what it was, survival. The worst wasn't the police doubting me, the worst was seeing Tomas comfortable with that doubt, because instead of protecting me, he was fanning the flames. The officers were proper, they didn't yell at me or anything, but they started with those questions that sound like a trap. Why I didn't call earlier, if I remembered correctly, if there were cameras in the area, if anyone saw me. And I honestly felt that the real assault was happening right there in my own house with Tomas as an interested spectator. When they finally left, Tomas didn't hug me or say, "We'll figure it out." He told me with a cruel calm that he hoped I wasn't getting myself into trouble. Imagine, me, his wife, supposedly assaulted, and he's worried about his reputation and his peace of mind. At that moment, I understood that it wasn't me who had broken something, it was him. He had decided that no matter what happens, he will always believe the worst of me. Comments on the update. One anonymous user one says, "The guy you both dislike." So, you were ready to blame an innocent person. That's not just lying to your husband anymore. It's putting someone at real risk for your ego and your lost ring. And you're indignant that Tomas shows evidence when you're using the police as a shield. You're not a victim, Isabella. You're a danger with a smartphone. OP's reply. I'm fascinated by the level of certainty with which you invent things I didn't say. I didn't blame an innocent person. I described what I remembered under stress, and anyone who has been scared understands that. Tomas didn't show evidence to help me. He did it to see me fall, because that's his way of punishing. If you want to turn a scared woman into a monster, go ahead, but don't ask me to accept it. Anonymous user one says, Tomas didn't fan the flames. He just saw that your story was falling apart with data. If you get mugged, you don't go buy drinks afterward as if nothing happened. You're trying to sound smart, but it just sounds like you were partying without a ring and now you're improvising crimes. Stop calling him jealous. He blocked you because he doesn't want to deal with your manipulation. OP's reply. How easy it is to judge when you don't have a husband who abandons you in public and then washes his hands of it. They use the drinks thing as if it were a crime. What if I was trembling and needed water, sugar, something? You want the victim to be perfect to believe her, and if she's not perfect, then she deserves punishment. Tomas blocks because he controls. He cuts off communication, so I'll get desperate, and it worked. That's why I did what I did. Update 2. 2 days later, I received a summons to testify again. Not a friendly call, not a "we want to clarify some details," but that cold formality that makes you feel guilty even if you're not. The detective said there were inconsistencies in the timeline and they needed a second interview. I heard that, and the only thing I thought was, Tomas has already planted doubt in them, and now the state is too. I sat across from them and felt like every question was a pincer closing in. Could I describe the exact place where it happened? Did I remember the attacker's hands? Did I scream? Did anyone come to help? I answered as best I could, but the more I tried, the more I realized my story didn't have a real anchor. And when a story doesn't have an anchor, it gets carried away by any current. I left there with a knot in my stomach and a horrible certainty. If this kept escalating, I was going to end up being the official suspect of my own tragedy, and I wasn't going to let them humiliate me like that. Not after Tomas abandoned me, not after he left me adrift as if I were a mistake. If anyone was going to dictate the end of this story, it was going to be me. So I did the only practical thing. I looked for Nico, because no matter how much people want to romanticize morality, the reality is that Nico was the only clear link to the moment I took off the ring. I wrote to him first, casually, like someone who doesn't want to scare anyone, then more directly. I told him I needed his help to remember, that the police were on my back, that Tomas was destroying me. That's when the exotic X mask fell off. Nico confessed that he had the ring, that when I took it off in a quick move, he had saved it for safekeeping because he saw I was distracted and didn't want it to get lost. And look what a hero, right? The hero who keeps a family heirloom without telling you. When I asked him to return it, he wasn't indignant or apologetic. He got comfortable. Nico told me he would return it if I paid him $5,000, as if we were negotiating for any object, as if I were buying back my own stability. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but then I understood the game. He knew I was cornered. And when someone knows that, you either use them or they use you. So I made a decision that no one likes to hear, but that anyone would make if they had their back against the wall. I took money from the couple's emergency savings. Yes, from the ones you save in case something happens. Well, something happened, this happened, and I wasn't going to let a blackmailer and a punishing husband ruin my life out of pride. I paid Nico and got the ring back. When I had it in my hand, I felt a mix of rage and relief that almost made me dizzy, because there it was, the symbol, the piece, the proof. And in my head, there was only one plan, to make that ring reappear naturally, as if the universe had finally decided to be on my side, because after everything they put me through, the least I could do was win one. Comments on Update 2. Anonymous User 1 says, "Did you seriously use the couple's emergency savings to pay your ex $5,000? Not only did you lie about the assault, now you've put common money into a blackmail to cover yourself. And you still narrate it as the only practical thing, as if practicality erases the crime and the betrayal. Tomas isn't destroying you, Isabella. You're burning your life with gasoline and then blaming the wind." OP's reply. "I'm impressed how you turn a survival decision into a capital sin, as if I had clean options. The savings were for emergencies, and this was a real emergency. My marriage was hanging by a thread because of a mistake Tomas magnified. Nico cornered me, and I responded as anyone responds when they're being extorted, by solving it, not by crying. But of course, it's easier to insult me than to admit that Tomas pushed me to this edge when he left and blocked me." Anonymous User 1 says, "Your plan is literally to make the ring miraculously reappear to support a false report. I mean, not only did you lie, you're designing the evidence to deceive the police and your husband. And the worst part is, you get offended if someone calls you manipulative when your story is a manual on manipulation. I hope the miracle ends with real handcuffs, the kind the police put on. OP's reply. How morbid you all are. You really seem to enjoy imagining a woman punished for not obeying the perfect script. I'm not designing evidence. I'm trying to get an object back to where it belongs and stabilize the situation. If the police and Tomas already went into hunt mode, I wasn't going to stand still waiting for them to tear me apart. You guys get excited at the idea of seeing me fall, but my priority is to protect myself, not to please your thirst for lynching. Update 3. The day the ring appeared, I prepared myself as if it were a surgical operation. Controlled breathing, serene face, soft tone of voice. I put it in my purse carefully, as if the purse were a sanctuary, and mentally rehearsed the version that best fit with everything else. Not because I wanted to lie for sport, but because reality was distorted by Tomas, by the police, and by the disaster he himself had caused by leaving. I entered the house and saw Tomas with a strange calm, a calm that wasn't peace, it was calculation. He was no longer in husband mode, he was in private investigator mode. Still, I did what an intelligent woman is supposed to do. I gave him an easy out. I told him that while looking through my purse among papers and things from the chaos, I had found the ring. I presented it as a kind of painful coincidence, as if the thieves, in their clumsiness, had dropped it and I had just noticed it later. Tomas didn't celebrate, he wasn't relieved, he didn't hug me, he just looked at it as if he were looking at an object in an evidence room. He asked me with that flat, cutting voice, how exactly it had appeared, and I repeated the idea that it must have fallen inside my purse when I struggled. I tried to give it emotion, I tried to give it humanity, because that's what makes a story believable, the emotion. But he wasn't moved. Tomas remained silent, as if he were listening to an old audio he already knew. That night, he told me he wanted to talk without police, without third parties, without theater. He painted it as an opportunity to fix things, to be us again, so that I wouldn't be at risk anymore. And I fell for it. Yes. Why? What is a wife supposed to think? I thought that maybe finally he would stop punishing me. He asked me to be honest so he could help me, that if the report had errors, it was best to clarify it before it got bigger. I explained what anyone understands, that I panicked, that I felt abandoned, that I didn't know how to come home with an empty finger and a husband in executioner mode. I told him that the story of the assault formed in my head as a defense mechanism, that I didn't want to hurt anyone, that I just wanted to avoid a greater humiliation. And I said it because at that moment it seemed like an act of trust. If he promised me calm, I would give him truth. When I finished, Tomas did something that chilled my blood. He showed me his phone with a video screen ready and told me that everything had been recorded. My full confession, my admission that the robbery was a lie born of fear and his reaction. In his head, that wasn't a couple's conversation, it was a capture. He talked to me about criminal conduct, about dangerousness, about, I can't live with someone capable of inventing a crime, as if he hadn't been the trigger with his abandonment and his blocking. That's when he dropped the final bomb, that he already had the cameras from the party venue, that he had gotten them himself on his own before I could control anything, that he saw me take off the ring, that he saw me with Nico, that he saw I was moving like someone who hadn't been assaulted, but desperate to hide something. I mean, Tomas wasn't looking for the truth, he was looking for the cleanest way to crush me with it. And now, with my recorded confession, he had the perfect hammer. In less time than it takes people to upload a story to Instagram, I went from wife to legal threat. Tomas told me he was going to file for a restraining order and divorce, and that I had to leave the house that same night. He packed my life in silence, with that coldness he calls maturity, and left me at the door as if I were a toxic bag. I wanted to scream, I wanted to demand emotional justice, but it was useless. He was already narrating my fall as if he were a hero saving himself from a criminal. Comments on Update 3. Anonymous User 1 says, he recorded you confessing because you're capable of inventing an assault, blaming a third party, and dragging the police into it. And you still say you fell for it as if you were a child when you've been manipulating everyone throughout the whole story. Tomas didn't crush you, he documented you, which is different. Finally, someone took you seriously as a risk. A restraining order isn't an emotional punishment, it's a security measure. OP's reply. How nice how you romanticize a husband recording his wife as if he were a detective hunting a criminal. That's not security, it's control and revenge dressed up as justice. And you all applaud because you love to see a woman fall. I trusted him because he sold me the idea that he wanted to fix it, and he used that trust as a trap. If that seems morally superior to you, then the problem isn't me, it's the kind of world you defend. Anonymous User 1 says, the party cameras are the final touch. He saw you without a ring flirting with your ex, and then you invent a crime. Panic doesn't justify you lying to the police, let alone trying to fabricate a miraculous story. Tomas isn't jealous. He's someone who won't tolerate his partner destroying him for a whim and ego. I hope the restraining order also includes that you can't invent more victims. OP's reply. You all talk as if a marriage were a permanent trial where the man decides whether to absolve or convict you. Yes, I talked to Nico. Yes, I took off the ring, and that doesn't equate to me deserving to be left on the street like trash. Tomas didn't react with boundaries. He reacted with punishment, blocking, abandonment, and now legal tools to humiliate me. But of course, for you, the man always protects himself and the woman always had it coming. Update 4. The following days felt like living in a courtroom hallway, even though I wasn't formally in one yet. I went to a motel because I had nowhere to go without accepting extra humiliation, and because Tomas, of course, was already moving pieces so that everyone would know he was the poor man who escaped from a dangerous wife. I was paying for a cheap bed with a mix of rage and fear, trying to convince myself that this was temporary, that everything could be cleared up. But it wasn't temporary. The prosecutor's office charged me with filing a false police report because the police had spent resources, time, patrol cars, interviews, and, according to them, all for an invented story. They told me with that bureaucratic coldness that has no interest in emotions that the system doesn't work with panic, it works with facts. And I wanted to scream at them that my facts were born from my husband's abandonment, but the system doesn't process that kind of truth. I try to do what anyone would do when they realize the world is closing in on them. Find a more believable culprit than myself. And there was one Nico. The same one who kept the ring, the same one who extorted me, the same one who took $5,000 from me with a smile. So when they asked me why everything was inconsistent, I said the obvious, that there was pressure, that I was being manipulated, that Nico pushed me to act that way. For a second, I thought the strategy would work. Because nobody likes a blackmailer. The problem is that Nico wasn't stupid. When the detective summoned him, he didn't arrive trembling, he arrived prepared. He came with messages, screenshots, the complete conversation where I tried to coordinate the alibi, where I talked about making it appear, where I asked how to handle times and details. And the worst, he came with the record of the payment of the $5,000 as if it were a receipt for my own ruin. That's when I realized something disgusting. In this story, the system didn't see a context, it saw an author. And on paper, the author was me, because I was the one who called the police. I was the one who gave the description. I was the one who held the narrative. Nico came out as an opportunist, yes, but an opportunist who only took advantage of my panic. Tomas, on the other hand, came out as the exemplary citizen who collaborated with justice and protected his home. Everyone got a clean roll except me. I tried to explain that I was in shock, that I was cornered, that the extortionist took advantage of me, that I just wanted to recover something that belonged to Tomas's family. But every sentence came back to me like a boomerang. If I wanted to recover something, why did I turn it into a crime? If I was scared, why did I coordinate an alibi? If I was a victim of Nico, why did I pay him from shared emergency funds without reporting him first? And there, in a motel that smelled of damp and with a legal folder growing like a tumor, I began to understand that Tomas didn't just leave me. He designed a destiny for me, because with his recording, with his cameras, with his restraining order and his divorce, he created a narrative where I am dangerous and he is prudent. And the system loves those simple stories. I was alone, trying to fight against a version of me that was already written, printed, and sealed. Comments on the update. See you. Anonymous user 1 says, blaming Nico is the most predictable move. You invent the assault, you call the police, you stick to the lie. The fact that Nico is an opportunist doesn't make you a victim. It makes you the author who got into a crime and then paid to cover it up. And your messages bury you because they show it wasn't panic, it was planning. The system didn't lock you up, Isabella. You locked yourself up and now you're kicking the walls. OP's reply. How convenient to say, you locked yourself up. As if I woke up wanting to destroy my life for entertainment. Nico literally took advantage of me, and you all still want to paint him as an innocent secondary character just because it suits you to hate me. My messages were desperate attempts to understand how to get out of a situation that Tomas aggravated with his abandonment. But of course, if a woman panics, it's planning. If a man prepares cameras and recordings, it's prudence. Anonymous user 2 says, the $5,000 is proof that you don't care about anyone, not Tomas. Not the police, not the supposed innocent person you were going to blame. You used common money to buy a miraculous appearance and continued to support a false report. And now you're in a motel because Tomas had the intelligence to get you out before you sank him with your stories. I hope you get charged so you learn that real life isn't a script you edit in your favor. OP's reply. You all speak with a personal hatred that I don't even understand, as if I had done something to you. The money was used to resolve an extortion and recover a family object. Something that Tomas, if he were a husband, should have helped me handle. I'm in a motel because he decided to treat me as a threat instead of a partner, and that's also violence, even if you don't recognize it. And if real life can't be edited, then explain to me why Tomas was able to edit the story to come out as a saint. Update 5. In the end, there was no heroic twist. No, everything was cleared up. No, none of those things that people like to sleep peacefully. There was a sentence, probation, huge fines, and a criminal record that sticks to you like a label that doesn't come off even with boiling water. When I heard the decision, I felt that I was being punished not just for a report, but for having tried to survive a man who abandoned me and then dedicated himself to destroying me with calm. The cruelest was the silent consequence, my job. I worked in banking/finance, a world where reputation weighs more than your skills. It didn't matter that I knew how to do my job. It didn't matter that I had years building a professional image. As soon as the record appeared, they fired me. Quick, clean, with a corporate phrase about trust and values. I just stared at the wall, thinking how ironic it is that they kick you out for values when no one has values with you. And while I was trying to hold on by a thread, the divorce moved forward like a train. Tomas arrived with his whole package of evidence, the recording, the cameras, the reports, and what he loved the most, the issue of the $5,000. He presented it as theft, as illicit use of common funds, as if I had taken money to go on vacation with a lover. And the judge, of course, bought the simplest version, that I took money from the couple for an illegal purpose, and that disqualified me morally for any negotiation. The divorce settlement was a complete humiliation. They denied me any division of assets as if I hadn't contributed anything to that house, as if I hadn't been part of that life. And they also assigned me the total debt of the legal costs, mine and Tomas's, because he positioned himself as the damaged party and I as the dangerous party. It was like watching someone turn your fall into a profitable business. Tomas didn't just leave me, he billed me. I tried to say it was unfair, that I wasn't a dangerous criminal, that I made a mistake under pressure, that the punishment was disproportionate, but the system doesn't listen to nuances when it's already decided who to make an example of. So I came out with a mountain of debt, without a formal job, with a record that closes doors, and with the constant feeling that everyone is waiting for me to trip again to say, see. Now I work in the informal economy. Not because I don't want to work, as the moral geniuses of the internet will say, but because the corporate world spits you out and then asks you to smile. I do what I can, I charge what I can, and every month a part of it goes to paying fines, lawyers, installments, things that shouldn't even exist if Tomas had been a man capable of talking instead of blocking and abandoning. And yet, what burns me the most isn't the money, it's the narrative. Tomas was left with the perfect story, the man with firm boundaries who saved himself from a lying wife. And I was left with the label of crazy, manipulative, delinquent. No one wants to hear that this started with a jealous husband who preferred to block me rather than face an adult conversation. Because that truth is uncomfortable, it implies that he also did harm. And people love the comfort of a single villain. This is how it ends, with Tomas sleeping peacefully in a house that is no longer mine, with his family congratulating him for being strong, with Nico walking free because he knew how to sell himself as a witness, and with me paying for everyone. But if one thing is clear to me, it's that life punishes the woman who defends herself, even if she defends herself badly, even if she defends herself clumsily, even if she defends herself desperately. Because the world prefers a silent wife to a wife who tries to control the narrative. Comments on Update 5. Anonymous User 1 says, "You were convicted because you lied and consumed public resources, not because you're a woman who defends herself. You lost your job because in finance you need trust, and you proved that you fabricate stories when it suits you. The divorce was a logical consequence. You stole $5,000 from common funds to cover up a crime, and that destroys any fair distribution. It's not a narrative, Isabella, it's acts and consequences, and they finally got to you." OP's reply. How easy it is to reduce a whole life to a phrase of acts and consequences, as if reality were a moral exam. I didn't fabricate stories. When I was cornered, I reacted to an abandonment and a pressure that Tomas created with his cold punishment. In finance, they talk about trust, but no one talks about how someone is punished without hearing the human context. You want me to accept the role of a monster so your world feels orderly, and I'm not going to do it. Anonymous User 1 says, Tomas didn't edit anything. He gathered evidence because you were capable of accusing anyone to save your ego. Nico is trash for extorting you, yes. But you were the one who called the police, the one who planned the alibi, and the one who paid to support it. Now you work informally because you close the doors on yourself, and on top of that you sell it as oppression, so you don't have to take any responsibility. The only jealous one here is your pride that prefers to sink rather than admit it. You ruined it yourself. OP's reply. I love how you all enjoy the punishment of others, as if it were a sport to see someone lose everything and applaud, they deserve it. Tomas gathered evidence with the intention of destroying me, not helping. If he had wanted to fix it, he wouldn't have blocked or abandoned me. Nico extorted me because he smelled blood, and the blood was caused by Tomas when he decided to make me an enemy, not a wife. And if my pride bothers you, it's because you'd rather see me beg. But I wasn't born to kneel before your tribunal.